Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi, and well, I don't think it's a secret to anyone that Standard is by far the most played format on Arena, and probably always will be. The problem, so to speak, comes up when Standard gets solved quickly and very easily becomes dull and boring. That's why I often recommend that people have a second favorite format, a second format to turn to when they need to cleanse their palate of that potential Standard stench. And today we are going to be talking about a format that is so budget friendly that the fine folks of Wizards of the Coast don't even promote it anymore. But before we get into all that, I'm sure you know that the 5-year foundation set in Standard is going to change a lot of things, not just in Standard, but in particular for budget and free-to-play players. What you may not know is you can make a big impact around here by making a funding choice through our Patreon, whether you're just helping keep the lights on every month, or you're making contributions towards specific content or hardware upgrades. Just know all the Patreon funding goes back into the community. Now, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, right. Alright, so today we are going to be talking about the ultimate budget-friendly format, that of course being Standard Brawl. And sometimes the nomenclature changes on this. At other times you will simply hear this referred to as Brawl, and the 100 card counterpart as Historic Brawl. So to start things off, this format requires that you have a commander designated card that is from the standard playing pool. And the good news is Foundation gives you almost 20 very budget friendly commander options, including many in the current starter set. Beyond that, you need 59 other cards, roughly 40% of which are going to be land. And best of all, you only need and can only play one copy of each card. All of which sums up to a very budget-friendly format. But today, we are going to take a special look at the Foundation's essentially core set and find ways to make this really budget-friendly format even more budget-friendly for us free-to-play players. In order to accomplish this goal, we're going to focus on 10 colorless cards that really could fit in virtually every Standard Brawl deck you ever build, which gives you about 15% of every single deck, and that's a big head start. But before we break into those top 10, let's talk about a few cards that seem like they would meet this definition of Standard Brawl stars, but really don't. Alright, so let's start off with Swiftfoot Boots, a card that a lot of Brawl and Commander players would tell you needs to go in every single deck, but I would caution you against that sort of thinking. You see, Swiftfoot Boots only makes your good cards better. If you put this on a mediocre creature, it's still a mediocre creature that's unnecessarily hard to kill. And that very likely is not going to win you games, much less deserve a spot in your deck. So while Swiftfoot Boots can certainly be good, it is situational and you need to use it more cautiously than a lot of people would recommend. Next up, we need to talk about the Scrawling Crawler, a 3-mana, 3/2 artifact creature, Phyrexian construct. Not only is this a 3-mana X2, which you will hear me say with regards to Foundations, is very easy to kill in the current Standard environment. Secondly, allowing your opponent to draw additional cards is quite the gamble. And while the Crawler does punish your opponent for drawing those cards with life loss, unless your entire Standard Brawl deck is built around punishing their card draws, and then having a plan to deal with them, this is a card I would recommend avoiding. And that brings us to Banner of Kinship. And in today's Standard, where Tribal is such a strong commodity going on, and well, that's not likely to change anytime soon, Banner of Kinship seems like it would be a windmill slam for every single tribal deck. But the reality is, more often than not, Banner of Kinship ends up being what many refer to as a win more card, where you already had the game won. This just really made it somewhat of a overboard situation. The one place this card is very good is if you play it before your opponent wraths away your board. It makes for a very easy recovery. So while it won't go into every single deck, it certainly will find its slots into some. And taking up the last slot in the not quite good enough is the 7 mana 3/3 colorless removal piece, Meteor Golem. And the reason this doesn't quite make the cut is that in virtually any color or color combinations, you're going to find removal that is better or just as good as Meteor Golem for way less than 7 mana. So unless you're actually playing a deck that revolves around being truly colorless, Meteor Golem is probably not going to find a slot in your 59. Cryptic Caves, an uncommon land that taps 4 colorless mana, and you can pay 1 and sacrifice the land to draw a card. Activate only if you control 5 or more lands. Let's face it, late game card draw is pretty universally good. And while this card might get overshadowed by some of Blue's card draw options, it will pretty easily and universally fit into the other 60% of 2-color combinations available for standard Brawl decks. Cryptic Caves is not available to you through store packs or from drafting the Foundation set, but it is well worth an uncommon wild card for its late game draw capacity. Starting things off with number 10, we've got Demolition Field, an uncommon land that basically just taps for colorless mana, but also you can pay 2 and sacrifice it to destroy a non-basic land an opponent controls. They get to tutor up a land, a basic land, and we also get to tutor up a basic land to replace our Demolition Field. So this can serve 2 purposes. One, to punish those greedy 3 multicolored decks out there and potentially cut them off of a consistent multicolor mana source, as well as providing fixing for our own deck in a pinch. At number 9, we have the Temple lands for, well, maybe not all of your 2-color mana needs, but this certainly goes a long way and is going to be around in Standard for quite some time. And the very best news is that you got a one-of set for these in your starter collection. So when it comes to Standard Brawl, you are covered. Similarly, at number 8, we've got Solemn Simulacrum, the 4-mana sad robot 2/2 artifact golem. When this creature enters, you may search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. And when this creature dies, you may draw a card. This is just an excellent piece for not only mana fixing or ramp, but also some of that late game card draw. And if nothing else, it's going to serve as a blocker that may even trade on a particular block, all in how you use it. The very best part of this, just like the Temple lands, this is part of all of the current Brawl decks that come with your starter collection. So while you may not have the Foundations copy, you probably have a copy of Solemn Simulacrum hiding in your Eternal collection, and you can use it in both Standard and Standard Brawl. Heraldic Banner is at number 7, and honestly this is an uncommonly good artifact to have. A 3-mana rock that helps you ramp, as well as boosting the power on creatures of your chosen color. It will only produce that one color, but oftentimes that is enough. As budget players, we very often build monocolor Standard Brawl decks, or ones that tend to lean a little heavier into one color or the other. This can serve either side of that, either, for instance, boosting your more prolific green creatures, or perhaps adding a valuable source of your off color. The banner can show up in both store packs of foundations as well as the limited environment, so don't be too quick to craft this particular uncommon. It may very well come to you. At number 6, Leyline Axe does kind of require you to play creatures, but you at least have a commander no matter what else your deck looks like. And having this in your opening hand and being able to place it directly onto the battlefield, and then on turn 3 equipping it to your 2-drop to give it +1/+1, double strike, and trample, all feels like a pretty solid play. Not to mention, we periodically see both standard and Brawl decks that care about the number of artifacts that you have, and being able to put an extra one into play on turn 1 is very good stuff. Number 5's Adaptive Automation is kind of the working definition of flexibility. Not only is it 3 mana and colorless, a 2/2 creature, but it's a construct or whatever creature type you want it to be as it enters the field. More so than that, it's also a lord for the selected creature type. And the way we've been seeing tribal decks lately, this is going to be an all-star as well as highly versatile. Unlike Adaptive Automation that would require a wildcard commitment, Sire of the Seven Deaths at number 4 is available through both store packs as well as drafting or doing sealed. So I would not necessarily put a Mythic wildcard into this card, but once it shows up in your collection, it should absolutely get a spot in your standard Brawl decks. A 7 mana 7/7 Eldrazi with 7 keyword abilities: First Strike, Vigilance, Menace, Trample, Reach, Lifelink, and Ward for, you guessed it, pay 7 life, is just too much value. It goes particularly well into any deck looking to ramp, but having this as a top-end finisher in all of your standard Brawl decks is not a bad way to go. Number 3's Soulstone Sanctuary is a land that not only becomes a creature that meets all of your tribal wants and needs, it also produces colorless mana, and because it only becomes a creature once when you activate it, it will really help you out with those post-Wrath situations, but is susceptible to that second Wrath possibility. My number 2 pick on this list is Cultivator's Caravan, and while this may not make the cut in your 100-card Brawl decks, its placement within Foundations makes it a little too good to pass up for those standard Brawl needs. A 3 mana rock is not terrible to start with, and the fact that you can crew this vehicle into a 5/5 creature makes it well worth the rare wild card that you'll need to craft this, because it's not available in store packs or in limited environments of Foundations. And let's be honest, Mazemind Tome as my number 1 pick here really should be no surprise. I've been talking about the benefits of this card in multiple formats for quite some time, and its presence in Foundation just solidifies that within a standard Brawl. The ability to scry almost for free, to draw cards for 2 mana, and ultimately exile it. If you do, you gain 4 life. Pretty solid thing for nearly any deck. This will cost you a rare wild card, but again, I think it's well worth it. This is another one of those cards that will not show up in a store pack or in a Foundations limited event, but it is an arena reprint. You may already have one. So there you go, guys. While there is certainly more colorful cards that could be considered staples for the standard Brawl format, these are the 10 or so cards that I think have a shot at fitting into every single standard Brawl deck that you ever build. So my suggestion is to prioritize those as you enter into the format, several of which you are likely to already have. But hey, I want to know what you think. Get down in the comments below and let me know what staples you consider from standard when you build your standard Brawl decks. And before we go, while every member of this community is important to me, I just wanted to take a moment and give a shout out to those patrons providing financial support and keeping the Stronghold from being a complete financial black hole. And of course, let me leave you with some suggestions for your next step here on the channel.